Yeah, and unfortunately, they got intermittent.
Everybody, I want to welcome you to the policy meeting, here in Jefferson, and like to, at 6:30, and like to recognize Sue Horn for being here, President Pico Antonio, Vice President Maureen, and School Board Member Kara. We also have Treasurer Scott Gooding, Assistant Superintendent Jill Elliott, and Superintendent Steve Barrett. And okay, so we're gonna start. We're gonna start with first policy, I guess. And the first policy is 0148, expressions of members. And see, the board did request a review of this policy previously due to the increased volume of communication via social media and emails. And our attorney did look it over and made suggestions. Neola template is included and the different options. So it's just updating is what it appears, the language and including the social media aspect for communication. And anybody else say anything?
Covered.
The bylaws, just review what we talk about and the guidelines and boundaries. So I would say that it looks good to me. Anybody have any discussion? No?
No, I think accept it as the attorney's suggestions, right?
Yes.
That's the copy
Yeah,
that
Nicole,
we're
our attorney.
focused on, okay.
So
Do we need to use the microphone for the live stream? No, you do not.
Okay,
do I need to?
Nope.
All right, so it's accepted. And then the next one, we have policy 5630.01, positive behavior intervention and supports and limited use of restraint and seclusion. And this policy is updated by law. And it was reviewed by our assistant superintendent and the special education director. It's very comprehensive and detailed. The definitions have been included, what you can and cannot do, how it's done, limitations, common practices, prohibited practices, goes over the law and complaint procedures, incident reports, etc. Seclusion delineates the different age, different restrictions for age, disability, etc. Any discussion? It's very thorough, 20 pages.
What are the changes? I'm just trying to find.
not to page 5.
Yeah, the boxes that are checked.
Oh, sorry. So it's not, there's no language changes, are there just changes in the,
So Kelly and Sue Wigging actually were the two that
Okay.
reviewed this. And I don't believe that there are any substantial changes.
No, I looked it over too. It's very similar. The checks were,
so the boxes that are checked, are those the same boxes that are checked on our current version? Is that what you're saying?
I don't believe they were checked.
Yeah, those are new boxes.
Yeah, and by law, we have to approve it this month before the school year starts. And it's working with our EMS coordinator today to go in and update it in ODE. There's a department there, seclusion and restraints, and we're trying to get that to work. Wasn't working, but we'll make sure that it's updated in that way as well.
So is it the purple?
The purple checks.
That's the add?
Yes.
Okay.
Those are the additional pieces. When we get the template, they let us know what the options are, and then we go through and look at it and select the ones that apply appropriately. Thank you.
I mean, I think, given this is an important policy, given that You know, we heard the lifeguards at the pool talk about the behavior of kids this summer. We saw some of the same behavior. We had a lot more expulsions this year than we have had in the last 6 years. And I think this policy and the PBIS plans that principals put in place to begin the school year, I know a number of them are really going to focus on this to make sure that kids get acclimated right from the beginning of the year. During COVID, it was hard to have this policy implemented in a way that was robust. But I know a lot of our principals have talked about how important this is. And then, Lisa and Sue are going to partner on this policy.
They're partnering on PBIS, and we did previously have A through F in our policy, and
That's
the
what
additional
that's what I'm
ones,
seeing.
the additional options are the ones that are checked that are new for
Okay,
us.
got it.
Yeah.
So GH,
Got it.
I see to add that if a parent's not satisfied with the response provided, they may request to meet with the board in executive session. Is that new overall? That has a parent ever come to executive session on any disciplinary or?
Not that I know of.
no.
So it's accepted,
Yes.
sounds like, yes.
Yeah.
Positive behavior, intervention, and support. And next we have 6320, and that's purchasing and bidding. And Superintendent and Scott, our treasurer, would like to discuss the purchasing amounts.
There are no recommended changes to this policy. We just wanted to talk through it just to make for clarification purposes. With two of us, one brand new, one still 5 months in, honeymoon phase, I guess. Because I think with what's been the practice doesn't align with what the policy says. So as we're looking at board agendas, some of the policies, some of what we've heard is that folks were putting things on the agenda that were greater than $10,000 for a particular item. The policy says 50. So if we want to follow the policy, we just need to know which way we're going to go for what we bring to the board for approval. So if we stick with policy, then we're going to revise what comes on the agendas. If you want the 10,000, then we need to revise the policy to reflect that. So we're just looking for, our recommendation is when the policy was made that we would follow what's here unless the board wants to do something different.
I don't remember when we updated the dollar amount to 50,000. That was something that we did, I think.
2019.
It was, okay, so
Yeah, there was a change in state law that changed the competitive bidding thresholds from 25,000 to 50, and I think that's at the time when this happened.
okay, so we updated the policy, but we never changed the practice.
Practice.
We changed it for the bidding, but
Right.
I don't know that we changed it for the approval.
No, we didn't. And
So
I
those
think,
are two different things. So the first paragraph deals
right,
with
the
bidding.
bidding we did, and I think we wanted to just, put things on the agenda so public knew what we were spending. And yeah, so we weren't looking at the policy in that sense. That
So wait, though, it sounds like saying two different things. Is the purchase amount is the threshold 50,000 for the purchase amount or not in this policy?
I'm trying to find where the approval part
Right.
is.
So it's the second paragraph, it's the limitations, the price quotes. And it says all purchases that are made within the amount contained in the fund of the appropriation were originally contemplated in the budgeting process may be made upon authorization of the superintendent or treasurer unless the contemplated purchase is for more than 50,000, in which case prior approval is required from the board.
So we rarely have you do prior approval, right? I mean, to me, this is dealing with prior approval.
Well, what we bring, they can't order, if there's something that's on the board agenda, they can't order it until we've approved it. So that is the prior approval.
Okay.
So that's why we're talking about it here.
Yeah, it makes sense here. It says for amounts over 50,000, in which case prior approval is required from the board.
Which is greater than 50.
Right. Right.
But you're saying, we're what
They're
level?
putting 10 and above. Anything over 10, they're sending to us, they're putting on the board agenda.
I mean, we've already approved the appropriation, right? And we have a general idea of how the line item is going to be expended,
So you don't have a problem updating the practice to fit with the policy?
I
Is that
don't.
what you're
Does
saying?
anybody else?
So administratively, I mean, that has been a request from folks as they're, because it holds things up, because we meet once, a regular meeting is once a month. So for them to do what they need to do, it just,
Oh, right.
it sits and it holds things up a little bit.
Right.
Which could or could not have an impact on changing in prices, things like that. So I think that's their preference, is to go with the 50, but we just didn't want to arbitrarily, we just didn't want to do that without having that conversation.
Is there an amount that is, no, that, like a standard? I hate to say the word standard, that's why
For
I
our
wasn't
size of
saying it.
district, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what do other districts set that amount
I
at?
think when the law changed, I think most districts went to the 50.
50. I mean, if we've
Use
updated the
that.
policy, I feel like we already had this conversation, but
And not having been
We
here, I
just
didn't
didn't-
know, but we
yeah,
just.
I
we
don't
just-
remember
Tracy and I
either.
wanted to make sure that going
No
forward, we knew
recollection.
what that was. And
Yeah.
it was interesting, because I had, someone asked us earlier before we came over here that they had something and they were asking whether or not they needed to put that on the agenda. And I said, hey, check back with me in the morning. We're gonna talk about it tonight. I'll get back to you. Actually, I had two. I think there were two people today that came up. So they're just looking for some direction.
What happens with items, just so this is more just from my understanding, that we do have appropriations of a certain amount, but now items are over that threshold. Like, so do we ever, like, because one of the things I've always wondered on the agenda is it will say we've approved that, but it never says what was budgeted. So there's not a sense of knowing, are we close? Or like we on par, or it's always in a bucket, like total bucket? You know what I'm saying? Because otherwise it's kind of like, I don't know, like,
'Cause
is this all in line
Yeah.
getting us to $1 million in
Yeah,
total
'cause it's
purchases for
really-
this line item, or are we over? Like that never comes
Yeah,
up.
because what will happen, because you approve them at the appropriations at the fund level.
Mhm.
So if, for my example, in my office, if we were going to, I'm trying to think of a unique situation, professional development, I wanted to send staff to a training.
Right.
Well, for whatever reason, I didn't send them to training, I brought the speaker in because it was more cost effective, but
Right.
the money wasn't in the right place. I would move it from this budget line over to this budget line to take care of that. So they can move money within their budgets if it's a
Yeah.
little bit higher or
I'm
in a
saying
different
more of like
place.
something that was budgeted at 100,000 and now you've had purchase invoices or whatever that it's 150,000. Like, how do we know about those? And we can have this is beyond
We
We
this
can
scope.
do what
Yeah.
what we
Okay.
typically do, a $50,000 swing is pretty large, so that would be probably a bigger conversation with the treasurer, but we do, kind of, it balances out, so it may be 2,000, this happens often, $2,000 over, but this one's 2,000 under, so
Right.
ultimately, we don't go outside of what we've budgeted, and so we kind of shift funds appropriately, or sometimes we have to make a decision and say, okay, we can't purchase this year because we needed to spend a little bit more on this item, and that was a priority, so.
And because you approve at the fund level,
It can't.
those
you
things,
can't.
they'll never come to you. So
Right.
as long as we're within the fund, within the appropriation,
You're-
administratively,
So that's
we're
the
gonna-
check,
yes.
right? That's the check and
Yes.
balance.
yes.
Okay, I'm fine with it.
So are we accepting the 10?
There's no change to the policy. It stays as it is. They're just
50.
going to change the practice
Right.
Yeah.
to match the
So
policy.
for future board agendas, you will only see items that are greater than 50,000.
Okay,
Which will narrow the
Right.
list of things.
so that will expedite things for
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
a lot. Okay.
Now the favorite one of all.
I had a plan B, everybody's
Yeah.
back in my mind. if that's when I would do that. Where is that? And
I can't even say the word.
what?
Ridiculous.
Okay, next we have 8451 head lice. I I can't even, yeah, you're right, that's what you're saying, you can't say. Ridiculosis. So, there's been some edits, taking some wording out and adding, no, yeah, basically just,
Are these recommendations from Sue?
oh, let me see.
Yeah, she looks.
Special ed, as requested, yeah, we update the policy and the changes listed.
And the reason it's Sue is because she previously oversaw the nurses. But that will be shifting to Jen Korn, but that's why it's not really a special education
Yeah,
policy.
that makes sense.
What was the reason to go from no nits to live lice? Because I know, having gone through this, unfortunately, the nits, if there are nits, they can hatch and then spread. So I'm just curious as to like, but I also know like, it's hard to get to know nits also. So that it's a weird balance, but like, what was the reason to make that switch?
I think often it connects to attendance. You know, we do have students that it's really tough sometimes, but they don't, you know, produce live always. And so we're continually checking, but we also don't want to keep kids out of school for longer than they need to. So I think that is part of it, is the student attendance.
Do you know, I mean, is this a recommendation that is coming from the nurses?
Sue always works very closely with the nurses.
That's my assumption.
And this is not something that she would have come to on her own.
That was my assumption.
Yeah.
I just want
So the distinction is we're only checking for live nits now. I guess that last sentence, we have something marked out, but we didn't check to include no live lice. So I just want to make sure as we're finalizing this.
Yeah.
But shouldn't it say the district practices a policy of no live lice to
Yes.
return to school?
Yeah. Yes.
I'll make that update.
Right.
But then read that sentence below. We currently practice a no units
I
as
think that's just an
criteria.
explanation. I don't think that's a suggestion
Right,
to add
right.
that. I
Yeah.
think that's just an explanation to us.
For the
Just
change.
no nits.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I have a sister who is a school nurse. She can pick nits like the best of them.
It's a skill, I guess. Yeah.
How skill you want.
All right. And, all right, so two topics. Number one, gender-specific changes in policies at one time. This is being reviewed currently, and we are looking for like a grid of, just something that's consistent and that, we can talk about. So this is probably gonna need to be tabled, and we'll get a little more information and bring it back for a future next meeting. If that sounds good. All right. Next,
Could I just ask a question on that? Is Neola
Just one.
offering this?
No,
Okay.
no, they're not. Kimberly reached out to them and they're not offering to do this. We asked them if they had a version, they were willing to do it.
Okay.
so next is AG, retire, rehire for administrators. And did I give it to you?
Yeah, we have. I mean, this is just simple. We didn't have a policy on this, and so we needed to have one. We have a principle that we noticed the public in our last, I think early August, right? Early July, and we wanted to make sure we had a policy in place so that we could allow for this.
So that what?
We could allow for someone to retire and be rehired.
At the
So-
administration level.
So we have a practice of hiring people that weren't employees as a rehire.
Right.
What AG were we following for that?
I'm not sure, I don't think we didn't have one, so.
Do we have it to review it?
It's
Yeah,
right here.
It's
It's in the,
You
it's in the
wanna-
link. If you
Link,
get
It's in the link,
first,
it's
yeah.
not just sitting out there on the
Okay.
drive.
We don't, and just to be clear, this is an administrative guideline. This
We
is
don't
not
have to do
something
it.
that will
Not
go
something-
to the
it's
board
just
for
to-
approval. It's just for us to
It's
see
FYI.
It's just to
What
inform you
the-
of
the AG
a
is going
change.
to be.
Because
I
you,
think it's very necessary,
Yeah,
right?
because
I mean,
you'll be asked to vote on the
Correct.
public, the notice, the hearing, and then their employment, so I think that's what we're talking about.
Yeah,
just so that you
no, I
understood
agree.
How that,
Just,
what'll happen behind the scenes when
it
that hire
won't come
comes
to
you.
us on a board agenda though for approval.
That's right.
Anything else? All right, well, it is,
can I just ask one question? I know there were some issues with regard to STRS. Are all of those things baked into this?
See it in paragraph J.
Yes, Nicole reviewed this.
Okay.
And she was okay with it.
Sounds good to me.
all right, thanks everyone for your input and for showing up, and we will call it